Okay, what's going on around the throne? Let's go to Ezekiel 1. Everything that's described in Revelation isn't new. I've said that so many times. It's all hearken. It's to make us go back and to see the wonder of inspiration and what God has done in His Word. Look at what the throne of God is like in Ezekiel chapter 1, verse 4. And I looked, and a great whirlwind was coming out of the north, a great cloud, raging fire, engulfing itself, and brightness was around it, and radiant, like the midst of the color of amber out of the midst of the fire. Oh, a lot of people have trouble. I was at a shop in Galilee once, waiting in line for something. I'd live in Israel if I could afford it. I just love being over around, living around all the Bible stuff. But Bonnie and I were there. We were a month with our family, and I was at this shop, and I was listening to two Jews talk, and they were, praise the Lord, talking in English. And they study the Old Testament, and one of them says, "What is the chapter 1 of Ezekiel about?" And I thought, I can understand. I don't even know Hebrew, and I could hear. And they started talking about it. They said, "What is all that stuff?" Sounds like a lot of us wondering. Look at verse 5. And from within came the likeness of 4 creatures, and this was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man, and they had 4 faces. Each one had 4 wings. Their legs were straight. The soles of their feet were like soles of calves. This is weird stuff. It just sounds, like, I don't know, Disney or something. It's strange. But all of a sudden it makes sense when you realize that they're talking about the cherubim. Verse 10, the likeness of their faces, each had the face of a man, the face of a lion, the face of an ox, and the face of an eagle, verse 10. There we go. Now we've got those 4. Now it's all sinking. But number 1, when you see God's throne, always around it is this raging fire and these sparkling ones that are covered with eyes, and they glitter, and they're almost like effervescent. They're like when you're on a cruise boat looking out the back and the phytoplankton is lighting up in the wake. You don't have to be in a cruise boat, by the way. If you go into travel work, it works in other parts of the world. But you see this effervescent, sparkling light. That's what heaven's like. It doesn't stop there. Verse 13. And the likeness of living creatures, their appearance was like burning coals of fire and torches going back and forth. And fire was bright, and out of it went lightning. God's throne is not like sitting in hour after hour of lectures here. You'll be overstimulated when you're there. You're just like this. It's just like you can't take it all in. You're just looking, and these creatures are flying around, and there's lightning going, and there's like a furnace, the fire, and then the smoke, and it's just unbelievable. And then there are these, verse 18, and their rims were so high, they were awesome. Their rims were full of eyes around the 4 of them. Do you know what's happening? We're getting to the edge of what a human can describe. Ezekiel is seeing something, and he doesn't know what it is. And he's busily obeying God and writing it down. And he's just trying to put words. In verse 19, when the living creatures went, the wheels went beside them. And when the living creatures were lifted up, the wheels were lifted up. And he just said, what is going on? Wow, that's what it looks like around God's throne. And look at verse 22. It says, the likeness of the firmament above the heads of the living creatures was like the color of an awesome crystal stretched out over their heads. Imagine, in heaven, things that are so little and hard to get on earth are giant. Do you realize that the gates going into heaven are made of one pearl? That means the gates are 1,200-mile-high pearls. Oh, how big was the oyster? You know what I mean? Can you imagine? Heaven, the walls are 1,500 miles high, but the gate is at least 1,200 miles high. Well, I'm going to wait till we get to heaven because there's something to think about. Why did God pick pearl for the gates? There has to be a reason. And then look at verse 24. Here's the last thing around the throne. The sounds of mighty water and sparkling like burning fire. And when I went, I heard the noise of their wings. It was like the noise of many waters. And a voice came, verse 25, from the firmament. And verse 26, the likeness of the throne. And verse 27, from his waist upward I saw the color of amber, and around and within, and his waist downward, brightness, the brightness of fire. That's where any worship we offer arrives. Now, to get it closer to us, what I just read, that for some of you was old hat because you've read it so many times, for some of you it was brand new, and for some of you don't even care. Because remember, I know that all 7 types of Christians are out here. And I know that out here are some Sardis, dead as a doornail, and this doesn't impress me stuff. And then there are some Philadelphians. I mean, you're ready to unbuckle your seatbelt, and you want to go crash some plane and tell people about Christ. And we have everything in between. But wherever you are in the spectrum of Christianity, this is what we're all going to see. And it's going to be amazing. I will add one more thing that Daniel adds. Daniel 7, that's the next book, Ezekiel, Daniel. He tells us something that, since I read this, it's fascinated me, starting in verse 9. And I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow. The hair of his head was like pure wool. This sounds just like Revelation 1. Did you notice that? His throne was a fiery flame. Its wheels were burning fire. Now look at verse 10. And a fiery river issued and came out from before him. So the Ancient of Days is seated on the throne, and at his feet steps, and out from the steps flows a river of fire. Wow. It came forth from him. What does Hebrews say? Our God is a consuming what? Fire. He is, Isaiah says, when I read through the Bible, remember I told you I read through it once a month and looked for something every time. The first time was looking for all the names and titles and ascriptions of God. You know what one of them is in Isaiah? He is the everlasting burnings. And what Daniel sees right here is that this fiery river is coming out in front of his throne, and 1,000 thousands minister to him. 1,000 times 1,000 is 1,000,000. So millions of angels are moving around kind of like bees in a beehive, and they're ministering to him, while 10,000 times 10,000 are standing. I did an Excel chart, and if you just take the normal space it takes to stand and be able to fall down on your face and get back up, and just make a square footage for that, and then multiply that out for millions and hundreds of millions, being a Michigander, the throne of God, if this is the state of Michigan, the throne of God would take up 1/2 of the lower peninsula if you made a big circle and made enough room for all those people to be getting on their faces. And we only have the angels. We don't even have us in there yet because we're in the inner circle, because there's those 24 thrones. So what do we see in heaven? We see a throne, a river of fire, a sea of glass, these living ones that are flying around, the 24 elders that are seating, and these countless angels that Daniel's talking about. It's awesome.